Well, I think we're getting ready to start, so thank you all for joining us. A little bit of housekeeping. I'm Deanna Cohen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plastic Pollution Coalition. I'd like to welcome you all to the Plastic Pollution Coalition Global Webinar Series, where we bring together our global community to share the latest information, tips, and resources to help stop the growing plastic pollution crisis. Plastic Pollution Coalition is a growing global alliance of more than 1,200 organizations, businesses, and leaders in 75 countries working to educate, connect, and advocate for a world free of plastic pollution. A little bit about us. These are our webinar tips. We're going to ask you to participate in a very quick poll. There'll be 4 questions. In the Q&A section, you can post questions and upvote questions if you'd like the panelists to address those after their presentations. And we encourage you to share this on social media if you'd like to, and the hashtags are here on the screen. So let's get started with the 4 poll questions. We have 4 poll questions. And to help us get to know you and your interests, you'll have 20 seconds to respond to each, and then we'll share the results. Poll number 1, tell us more about yourself. Well, it looks like a lot of us are working with NGOs and organizations. We have quite a few researchers and academics and scientists, and students, and teachers, and policymakers. Welcome, welcome. And businesses, cool. Let's go to poll question number 2. Where are you joining us from? Awesome. Well, it looks like it's primarily people joining from North America and Central America, so welcome. We have a lot of people joining us from Europe, also from Africa, from Asia, from Australia, the Caribbean, and the Middle East, and Pacific Islands, so welcome. Let's go to poll question number 3. How familiar are you with microplastics? We're going to ask you to please select one. Okay, let's see. Well, it looks like people are somewhat familiar, but not experts. That's about 56% of the people here. And it looks like about 25% have extensive knowledge of microplastics and their impacts. And then 19% are interested and know that they're bad, but they don't know a lot about them specifically. So this should be a great discussion today for all of us. I'm looking forward to learning more as well. Let's go on to poll question number 4. Remember, you only have 20 seconds. So which of these are considered microplastics? Please select all that apply. Well, this looks like a very knowledgeable group, actually. That's right. All of the above are microplastics: nanoplastics, microfibers, microbeads, and nurdles. So with that, we're ending the poll. Thank you for participating in that. And thank you for sharing a bit about yourselves. The schedule for our time together today will be for the next hour and will be as follows. Both panelists, or all 3 panelists, will have 10 minutes to make opening remarks, followed by a moderated discussion. Throughout the webinar, please feel free to share your questions and vote on questions in the Q&A section from other attendees that you'd like to see answered, so you can upvote those. We want to start by showing Plastic Pollution Coalition's short film, Unseen: The Impact of Microplastics on Our Oceans and Ourselves, which also features today's moderator, Abby Barrows. Please make sure to adjust the volume on your device as needed. Let's roll the film.
I came on this expedition to research microplastics. We see it on the beaches and in the water, but we really don't know how many microplastics are in the coral sea. Walking along here, you see some really old trash, and a lot of it's photodegraded. You go to pick it up and it just shatters, and that's almost instant microplastics. So I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the quantity of trash on this beach. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, you can't even start to think about cleaning this sort of thing up as an individual.
Indonesia is one of the largest countries that are releasing plastic waste into the ocean, and it is a matter that needs to be addressed immediately, right away, because the impact to the marine environment is immense, and if we don't stop it now, then it might be too late.
Plastic is affecting the health of thousands of marine species. At the surface of the ocean, where photosynthesis is occurring, this accumulation of microplastics is being ingested by the largest of the filter feeders, right the way down to the smaller organisms, the microorganisms at the bottom of the food chain.
We're ready to go. It's been triple rinsed, and we are going to start the trawl. I'm recording the lat and long of this sample, because once we process the sample, we then post those results on the map. And so people from all around the world can see what the plastic concentrations are in their local watershed. The initial studies looking at microplastic ingestion in fish have shown behavioral, growth, genetic issues with fish that have ingested microplastic in the juvenile stages. So we know that there's some negative impacts. We just don't understand the full extent. How widespread is microplastic ingestion going to be affecting the future of basically every animal on this planet?
We are a part of the natural environment, and if we are not protecting those things, then we are putting everything on the planet at risk.
Plastic is entering the oceans at an alarming rate, 80 million tons a year, approximately, and all of that plastic will eventually become microplastic. Even if we stop producing plastic tomorrow, we would still have this legacy for centuries to come of microplastics in the ocean.
Thank you. So I am so excited and honored now to introduce Abby Barrows, who will be moderating today's panel. Abby grew up in Stonington, Maine. Her passion for travel brought her to the University of Tasmania, where she earned a BSc in zoology. After mapping the canopy of old growth temperate rainforests and trapping Tasmanian devils, Abby studied and published 2 papers on seahorse and pipefish behavior and diversity in Papua New Guinea. She has traveled the Southern Oceans and South Pacific by boat, trekked the Himalayas, explored the Middle East, researched sea turtles and big cats in South and Central America, dived Mediterranean wrecks, and worked aboard schooners and lobster boats in the Gulf of Maine. On her travels, she saw one thing in common everywhere: plastic pollution. Abby directed global microplastic pollution research since 2013 and developing the most diverse and largest known data set available to date. She has published multiple papers on the subject and obtained her master's degree from College of the Atlantic in 2019. When not studying plastics, you can find her out on her oyster farm, Long Cove Sea Farm in Deer Island, Maine. So excited for this panel. Been really looking forward to it. Welcome, Abby. I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm so excited to be here as well. So I'm Abby Barrows. I am I'm on the scientific advisory board of Plastic Pollution Coalition. I'm also a research associate with College of the Atlantic, a science research consultant, and I run a oyster farm here in Deer Isle. Today, we'll be focusing on unseen microplastic research and solutions. Our webinar panelists will explore what the newest research is revealing about the pervasiveness and dangers of microplastics. We'll also highlight ways to reduce your exposure to microplastics, as well as how to support legislation and policy change to make an impact. We'll be joined by Dr. Charles Rolsky, postdoctoral student at the Biodesign Institute of Arizona State University and Director of Science, North America for the Plastic Oceans International. Also joining us will be Prigi Arisandi, the Executive Director for Ecoton, and his daughter, Thara Bening Sandrina, Captain for River Warrior. They're both joining us from Surabaya, Indonesia. So it sounds like a lot of you are experts, but I'm going to just give a brief overview on microplastics and why this is an important subject. So microplastics are considered an emerging issue of international concern. Microplastics are defined, even though there's some discussion around this still, as plastics that are between 1 micron and 5 millimeters in size. So they range from being invisible to the naked eye to about the length of a grain of rice. Next slide. It's important to think of microplastics as a suite or class of contaminants. Microplastics are diverse. They come from many different products and polymer types. They're incorporated into a broad range of sizes, colors, and morphologies. For example, microfibers, fragments, films, spheres, pellets, foam. And they include a broad array of chemical additives. This suite of contaminants has the shared characteristics of being non-biodegradable. They absorb and release chemicals. They fragment, but they don't disappear. And they have been found in all of the world's oceans, from the surface waters to the deep ocean trenches, in freshwater environments, in our tap water, in our bottled water, in our beer, and our honey, and our table salt. Basically all the food that we're looking in, we're finding microplastics. And it's also in our air. The more places that we look, the more places we find it. So microplastics are often divided into two different categories. We have the primary and the secondary microplastics. Microplastics each have really different regulatory aspects. So the primary microplastics are manufactured to be less than 5 millimeters in size. So these include the pre-production plastic resin pellets. These are transported around the world to manufacturing sites where they're melted and molded into the final product. And they're the feedstock for making some of our everyday single-use plastics and other plastic products. Microbeads are used as an industrial abrasive or added into personal care products such as face wash or toothpaste as an exfoliant or a filler. These are now banned in many countries, but we still continue to live their legacy. The primary microplastics can directly enter the environment through spills in the case of nurdles or through our household wastewater. The secondary microplastics are the predominant type of microplastics that we are finding in the environment. So these are small pieces of plastic that come from larger pieces, breaking or fragmenting over time through biological, physical, and chemical processes. So think of tire wear, plastic bags, or styrofoam cups on the side of the road or in the ocean, fragmenting over time. Another significant contributor of secondary microplastics appear to be our synthetic clothing. So each time we wear or wash or dry our clothing, they shed microfibers into the environment. So both in the water and the air. So why do we care? We're living very intimately with this pollutant and still have a lot of questions about their impacts. Plastics are made with hazardous chemicals, which can leach out over time. Microplastics can absorb chemicals from surrounding environment at very high concentrations. So this tiny scrap of plastic acts as a sponge and can be laden with toxins and transported all over the world and into animals and us. They're also potential vectors for pathogens and diseases. And many of the associated chemicals with plastics have known negative human and environmental health effects. And they're only increasing in our environment. Essentially, they are everywhere. We know we're eating them. So it's estimated, even though these numbers could use more data, at around 1/2 pound of plastics each year. And we're also supposedly breathing in about 1/2 pound of plastics every year. Ultimately, this is really concerning. because we don't know the long-term effects of ingesting microplastics on either human or animal health. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Charles Rolsky. Charles
Awesome.
Rolsky is a postdoctorate researcher and conducts research in Rolf Halden's lab within the Biodesign Center for Environmental Health Engineering. He works on microplastic pollution, which has emerged as a major source of concern within many ecosystems and environments. Their identification, fate, and impacts are only now starting to be understood. They have developed several analytical tools to help improve upon this. They are collaborating with ASU's Fulton School of Engineering on several projects pertaining to microplastics, as well as with many groups around the world. They have studied plastic pollution in several ways, ranging from contact lens pollution to creating a method to detect microplastics in our own tissues and organs. Charles has also worked for several years on using non-invasive research methods to collect species health information. This includes fecal samples from wild species such as killer whales. Through this information, they can gather all kinds of knowledge pertaining to hormonal activity in the realms of stress, reproduction, and overall species health. He has been a teacher for over 6 years and actively participates in science outreach programs aimed at empowering budding scientists from elementary school to high school. He also serves as the Director of Science for North America for Plastic Oceans International. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Yeah, this is awesome to be a part of. So thank you for having me. I didn't realize that my bio gave away so much information about my talk, so I kind of just spilled the beans already. But yeah, so I'm the Director of Science for Plastic Oceans International, and we're honored to be working with the Plastic Pollution Coalition. I've got some fun pictures there, top left. Those are with some really passionate individuals I've worked with recently. That's some local Girl Scouts in Arizona that have put forward a legal ban on the release of balloons recently, which is awesome. And top right there, I was told that I could come to the state capitol to speak with legislators about ocean conservation. And I was told, and it was emphasized, that it was quite serious. So I wore a shark outfit. And then bottom right, we were honored to give a TEDx talk on plastic pollution. My first experience with ocean conservation was with the best dog I've ever met. His name was Tucker. He was a scat detection dog. So he was trained to find killer whale poop on the water to be able to understand them non-invasively. So you could look at their hormones, you could look at their reproductive levels, you could see what they're eating, if there's any contaminants in their body, all non-invasively. And so this was kind of my first encounter with the ocean, being able to visualize something so beautiful and also make connection to data that suggested that this species was in trouble. And so that really changed me, and moving forward, I kind of became the poop guy, where people would send me fecal samples of various animals, and for better or for worse, I would go through them and see what's going on within them. But eventually we would find things that were not biological. You're used to seeing fish bones, you're used to seeing scales, all sorts of things. But eventually we would see things in their fecal samples that were a little bit hard and resilient to our analytical techniques. And that's when we started noticing more and more plastic. And that's where I kind of shifted from, the poop guy necessarily to the plastic guy. At the time, what was lacking was an understanding of these things. So they ended up being called microplastics, as we're all here to learn about. And the more I read about them, the more I would see they would just be kind of reported as the number of particles, like 10 particles in a gram of soil. And they would maybe separate them by color or by size, but that was it. And I learned that different plastics behave differently, and some are worse than others. And I wanted to know, like, okay, of those 10, what are the plastic types? So we use what's called a Raman spectrometer that utilizes a monochromatic light, something like a laser pointer, and it shines into some sort of object, creates a vibration, the light's scattered back, and that scattered light is read back by the machine. It's almost like a fingerprint for whatever the substance is. It could be seaweed, it could be glass, it could be any type of plastic, but it gives us the ability to be able to differentiate the plastics. And we can also study degradation. So that bottom picture, we had a bunch of plastics on the roof of Arizona for some time under the sun, and they took a beating, which is good. That machine gives us all sorts of really interesting insight into what the type of plastic is, how degraded it is, and that was moving kind of the microplastic field forward. It gives us the ability to look at plastics worldwide. So all of those pictures are of the spectra that we get from the Raman spectrometer. So if it's a flat line, if I'm analyzing something and I see a flat line, that tells me that the bonds are relatively weak. It's probably something, biological. So it could be hair, it could be seaweed, whatever. If we do see kind of a peak, that tells me that there's really resilient bonds in there that are reflective of plastic. And so we were sent all of these samples from citizen scientists around the world of beach sand. We went through them and extracted the plastics, analyzed them. And it gave us this kind of worldwide view of the different types of plastics that exist in certain areas of the world. So very interesting. We also explored plastics that aren't really considered in sort of the pollution field. So we know bags, we know utensils, a lot of the single-use plastics are very commonly studied. And we started to take a look at plastics that aren't commonly studied. So these are a little bit more personal to us than like a fork or a straw, in the sense that many people can't function without medical plastics. We honed in on contact lenses. We did a survey and found that 1 in 5 people actually flush their lenses down the drain. And from there, it would be carried to a wastewater treatment plant. We looked at really, really degradative steps of the water treatment process to see if the contact lenses would be broken down or removed from the waste stream. And at the end of the day, what leaves the wastewater treatment plant is basically fertilizer. We found that the contact lenses persisted throughout the wastewater treatment process. Not only that, but it's such a physical and chemical process that it fragments them into microplastics. So in panel C there, that's the fertilizer that leaves. It's called biosolids, that leaves the wastewater treatment plant. And we went through it for about 45 minutes and actually found 2 contact lens fragments. So that was a really interesting study for us, because it's a lesser sort of studied, source of microplastic pollution and plastic pollution that no one really thinks of. And it was a cool lesson for us to learn at the end of the day. It ended up blowing up. So if you told me while we were going through, human biological samples looking for contact lenses that it would have hit all of these news outlets, I would have told you you were a liar. It did. For some reason, it resonated with people. And I think they made the connection between something very personal to them, an improper disposal technique, and then actually those combination of attributes leading to plastic pollution in the environment. And it was great for us to see, because you could conduct scientific research, excuse me. You could, attempt to publish it and then have it be shown at conferences and actually create human behavioral change. Because after this came out, loads of people came up to us afterwards and said, I've been doing this, I'm not going to do it anymore. Thanks for coming out with this. It ended up reaching around 2 billion people worldwide. And I think the coolest part is my collaborator, Varun Kelkar. He's from India, from Mumbai. And his aunt read about this research in their native language before he even told her about it. So it was a really cool thing to have happened, but in a really unique perspective into plastic pollution and microplastic pollution. One of the next steps we took was we want to get people to care about this. We want this to resonate. And so it wasn't just enough to isolate something as a form of plastic pollution. We wanted to show that it's in the environment and that it's working its way up the food chain. So we did a really interesting study with Monterey Bay, where we looked for plastics in the water column from 5 meters all the way down to 1,000 meters, so 3,000 feet below the ocean, using a remotely operated vehicle. And they would sample and filter the water at different depths and send it to us, and we'd go through it and see what we could find. I thought plastics were just going to be on the surface. We found fibers all the way down to 3,000 feet below the ocean. And so we took it a step farther, and we looked at really important species in the area. And one was actually living in the water column about 600 feet below the ocean. And then one was considered to be one of the most important prey sources in the world, the red pelagic crab that lived on the shore and in the water. And sure enough, both of those species had those same fibers in their stomach, which, kind of speaks danger for all the surrounding predators in the area. And we're sure that now these fibers are moving up the food chain and probably reaching us as well. So again, we wanted to create that buzz, and we weren't, even when we were showing that, microplastics were in Monterey Bay, in this beautiful area, moving their way up the food chain. So after, as what Abby had mentioned, there's been multiple exposure pathways isolated that show plastics can reach humans, whether it's drinking water, table salt, what have you. So we created a method to be able to extract micro and nanoplastics from human tissues and organs. And we're specifically looking at organs that are responsible for filtration, so kidney, liver, in terms of that. And then we're also really interested in looking at the lungs, because we now know that ambient fibers in the air can float around and we can breathe them in quite easily. So we're not really sure, is to the extent of damage it can cause, but we do know that when there's a foreign body in our cells, that it can cause something like inflammation, which is a precursor to cancer. Prior researchers have shown that animals that have ingested microplastics have them sequestered in their organs. So we would expect the same thing to happen with us. And this is something we're working on actively. We're very excited about it. And then ultimately, we want to convey to people why this is an issue, right? So back in the 1920s, we started mass producing cars, and like the Model T. And at the time, they were really interesting. But in hindsight, they weren't the safest. They didn't have the best emissions. They might have been okay on gas. But if you get in a car accident, one of those, the car will be fine and you'll probably be dead. And since then, we've evolved to these cars that are even powered by sunlight. If they're not powered by the sunlight, then they're very fuel efficient, they're safe, they have better emissions. And then if you go back to the 50s and 40s and you're looking at plastic, you see that it's this chemistry that's not really the greatest to produce because it's not great in the environment. If it's flexible, maybe it has phthalates in it, maybe it's got these other plasticizers that are endocrine disruptors. And then you fast forward to today, and we lack that evolution. It's still the same plastic. It's still as dangerous as it was before. And this is what we try to convey to folks, as we go around and talk about our research, is that it's kind of a failed technology that hasn't hit that evolutionary stage. And so we as consumers have a lot of power to avoid it and to create change. And so this is really important. It's a role that we all have. There's my information. I appreciate you all having me, and I'm happy to pitch in as needed.
Thank you so much. There's been a lot of interesting questions coming in response to your presentation there, which we'll address soon. So I'd love to now introduce our next two panelists, Prigi Arisandi, who is a biologist and founder of the Ecological Observation and Wetlands Conservation, Ecoton, in 1998. In 2011, for his dedicated effort in rehabilitating the Surabaya River through multi-stakeholder partnership, he was awarded the Goldman Environmental Prize. As a lecturer, he endorses thousands of students to actively participate in river rehabilitation. Since 2015, he has conducted investigative research on microplastics in the wetlands ecosystem, where he has discovered the most important river in Java Island is contaminated with microplastics. Now he is involved in a campaign to reduce single-use plastic, working with the local government. I'd also like to introduce Thara Bening Sandrina, who is 18. She's the captain of River Warrior, a youth environmental education and advocacy organization in Gresik, East Java, whose vision is to make the Brantas River free from plastic. She was raised in an environmentally active family, and she was interested in activism and environmental issues since she was little. She started campaigning about plastic pollution in Brantas River, Gresik, in 2019. Starting in her high school, she held plastic exhibitions and used social media to spread the word. Their recent project, called Info Mystic, focused on research and education in the microplastic problem in Brantas River. They have found microplastics in the Brantas River water samples and have used Instagram to educate the viewers about microplastic.
Okay, thank you, Abigail. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Prigi. Thank you for the opportunity to share our experience related with the microplastic in Indonesia. You can see in the pictures, last 3 years, we conduct research on the 10 important river in the important island of Java. And we found all the river were contaminated with microplastic, and more so that 72% our freshwater fish eat microplastic, and then especially is very is worry for us because common people who live in the river is eat fish from the river, especially if it is eaten by children, is very dangerous. And we conduct and the lab test on 51 people who living in the watershed and who positive. All 51 people is contained with microplastic, or 5 microplastic particle per 10 gram of feces. And similarly with the river water, the microplastic is contained 1 to 41 particle per liter. And yeah, we know that the microplastic, you know, you can see in the picture how we can see a lot of garbage in the coastal area in the river is why. Yeah, because Indonesia handling, you know, the condition is lack of collection system, which a collection system is only cover less than 30%. It means the 70% waste will be burning, will be dumped in waterways, and only 10% can be recycled. But I think it's a down cycle, not recycle. Yeah. So the river is become a favorite location for solid waste disposal, because most of the human population live in the river basin. On 2017, the World Bank conduct a research that in the 10 major city in Indonesia, and found that the diapers waste is biggest contributor of the plastic pollution in the water. And we have a experiment to put some trash boom in the river, and we found that 47% is diapers. So from the 821 piece of solid waste, we found 380 diapers. It means 47% the waste floating in the river is from the diapers. And you can see all the people is throw it all plastic to the river. Okay. Another problem is we have more than 50 paper factory, and we using waste paper from the foreign country, and then we have more than 100 recycled plastic waste. And you can see in my in the table, and the most the biggest exporter to Indonesia is from the USA and from the New York. Second from the Los Angeles, and from San Francisco, California. Every years, in this years, in 2019, USA sent it to 20 million tons of plastic waste. And the second is from the paper waste. All the paper waste is contained is smuggling with the plastic waste. And our paper factory is not good on the waste management, so they dispose wastewater without treatment in the river, and we found all the waste paper is contaminated with microplastic. And now we educate people, the community group who are vulnerable to the impact of microplastic. So especially women and children. So we create a river detective school program to train the children to identify the presence of microplastic in the river around where they live, and then we compare with the plankton. So the student conduct the research to compare the number of the microplastic comparing with the number of the plankton. So we want all people who living in the river knowing about the real situation, the real condition, and children and women is important group for us. And we did the detective school for the student. And then we conduct a plastic marathon. So we sailing the river, the long river in the Java Island, and we conduct the brand audit. We found and for women group, we made a marathon program. We walking along the river for 5 days and did a brand audit to find which brand are widely used in their waste and disposal into the river. Currently, the 5 women who will class action, they sue the 3 consumer good company who packaging in the throw it to the river. So after we are sailing to the river, we suing the government and the producer. Now we have a petition to ask our government to handle Indonesian microplastic problem. You declare a microplastic standard regulation for the wastewater for manufacture industry, especially plastic recycle plant and paper industry. So we hope you can sign the petition, and if you want to see the how USA waste contamination our river is, you can see the movie that you can see in YouTube is a take back how plastic waste smuggling in our imported waste paper become our raw material for paper factory. So we can communicate with us to fight against the microplastic. And you think I think it's the rich country, you are moving forward too fast, but leaving your waste with us who live in the poor country. So thank you. Maybe Thara will be continue the real situation in Indonesia about the microplastic. Thank you. Okay, Thara, is your...
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. Today we're going to talk about awareness on microplastic pollution in Brantas River. Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Thara Bening. I'm from River Warrior Indonesia, or shortly Rewind. Okay, talking about microplastic, I think we should talk about the source itself. Where's Indonesia's plastic waste ends up today? So this is a percentage of total plastic waste that generated. So the problem in Indonesia is a mismanagement waste. So 61% of the waste, there are no collection and there are no waste treatment system that leads to 47% open burning, which is 4.2 million tons of waste per year, and 9% waste leakage into rivers and sea, which is 620,000 tons per year. And this is some of our activities. We did a river cleanup and also a river monitoring, and we found that 301 trash dump sites along 42 kilometers of Surabaya River, or one dump every 100 meters of the river length. So in Terminal Brondong, which is in Lamongan City, is an estuarine of Bengawan Solo River. And in this terminal, we found that the water has the highest number of microplastic particles. And this is the distribution of microplastic in Bengawan Solo River in 2020. And we can see here in Terminal Brondong, we found 180 microplastic particles per 100 liter water sample, and the most found microplastic types is fiber. And in microplastic research done by Ecoton and Erlangga University on October 2018 to March 2019, they collect water samples from 7 locations at Lower Brantas area, which is Surabaya River, found 29 to 300 microplastic particles per 100 liter of water samples. And microplastic not only found in the environment like river water, paper mills effluent, fish, shrimp, but also found in human body. So there is also a research that found microplastic on human feces. And microplastic also found in all of the wastewater samples from paper mills, paper scrap importers in East Java. So there are 11 paper mill industry, and we can see here that it's the waste that the industry from the paper mill industry. And so in Rewind, we did a survey of youth perception on microplastics. So there are 700 participants, and some of the questions are, can microplastic enter human body? 93% said yes. And the next question is microplastic a hazard to human body? And 93% answer yes. And from the question, what are the sources of microplastic contamination? Mostly they answer food, 35%, from water, 25%, from cosmetics, 20%, air, 13%, and soil, 77%. So from this survey, we know that actually the youth knew about microplastic and they understand about the problems, but there's still less care about microplastic. So we collect water sample from microplastic and we did an observation. This is the picture of us collecting the water samples. We collect 100 liters of water sample from river with plankton net, and we count microplastic particles with microscope camera. And this is one of the most fun activities for me. So we did a plastic waste burn audit and education campaign. This is a picture of us doing burn audit and some media reporters. And this is us with the sign, reduce single-use plastic, stop throwing your trash to Brantas River. And so this is one of our activities. We send letters to the city and provincial government to provide waste management facilities and control plastic pollution in rivers. So the problem with our government is that their response on waste management, especially plastic, is still low. And it seems like it was not their focus. So we try to lobby the government we push the government to focus on the waste problem. And this is one of the recent activity. So we get a chance to meet the mayor of Surabaya City and give a letter to her in person. It's really, I think, a very good experience because we had a chance to talk face to face to her, and we can tell her about our experience doing river monitoring and tell her about what is happening in Brantas River. And this is one of our street activism. We do a demonstration. From the brand audit, we found that biggest plastic polluters in Surabaya River, the number 1 is Wing Surya, number 2 is Indofood, and the number 3 is Unilever. So we join an advocacy to plastic waste producers, and this picture is at Wings Group headquarters in Surabaya City. And I think education is really important. So from what we experience, we try to share our knowledge. And these are some of our activities in River Warrior. We did a school education campaign to refuse single-use plastic. We teach our friends about microplastic and about the plastic problems. We sell reusable men's pad in school, and we study about microplastic pollution in fish and water. And besides that, this is our youngest member in River Warrior. We also do a plastic exhibition, usually in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And we also did here river monitoring with we bringing our signs. And this is our 3 youngest member. We did a demonstration. So they dress up like a mermaid. So it's like a mermaid, river mermaid. And the signs that they're holding is stop throwing plastic to the river. I don't want to drink water that contains microplastic. And Surabaya River is not a dump site. And so my message to everyone is let's reduce, and reduce. Stop using single-use plastic, stop the plastic lifestyle, start using reusable stuff. Plastic can transform to microplastic, and we know that microplastic is dangerous. We don't want to eat plastic, and we don't want to drink water that contains plastic, so reduce now. And you can contact us on email at riverwarrior.id@gmail.com, or you can take a look on our activities on Instagram at river.warrior. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. This has been really inspiring to hear about all of the work you have been doing. We have started to run out of time, but I'd love to invite people to stay on for another 10 minutes so we can address some of these questions that have been asked before the webinar started and during the webinar. So without further ado, we will launch right into them. A question by Judith Weiss. Since many of what gets eaten goes right through and out the other end as humans, shouldn't we be more concerned about inhaling microplastics as a potentially more serious mode of exposure?
It's a really good question, and it's definitely it's actually been studied for a while now. I actually found a paper from several decades ago that examined human lung for the presence of fiber. It's certainly something that we should be considering, and I'm sure we're all going to be interacting with it. Even in the air, when the sunbeam comes through the window, you can see quite a bit of stuff in there, and we're also wearing a lot more polyester and nylon clothing, and so that's all contributing to fibers and fiber pollution, fiber shed, and we know it's in the wash. We know it's able to reach different ecosystems just because of its size and its ability to travel in the air. So it's certainly a major source of plastic in the environment, and that's why we're studying it a little bit more closely in terms of its presence in human lungs. It's a good question.
Great. So a legislation question. How is technology advancing / anticipated to be able to aid this issue? And what legislation, aside from microbead bans, is going into effect around this issue?
I think that'd be really interesting to hear from our other hosts there, because I know that from our perspective, there was the microbead ban, but there's been, I think, some community work done with single-use plastics in certain locations, but it's certainly not nationwide here. So I would say that we're heavily lacking in legislation aimed at reducing microplastic pollution.
Yeah, same. It's difficult for us in Indonesia to push the government, because it's still people want to something cheap, so people want to always using the microbead. So last year we start the petition to push our government to using produce the regulation that have standard on our personal care product about the microbead. Yeah, I think it's difficult, but we try to push the government because it's very dangerous for us. So yeah, we want you help us to send the petition to push our government to stop using a microbead on personal care. Thank you.
Great. All right. So sort of going back to the inhalation and microfiber question, what steps can be taken to address microplastics from laundering clothes, both in terms of redesigning fabric as well as filtration on the household or local level?
I think it kind of goes back to that, the example of if your house is flooding, what do you do? Obviously you want to turn off the water source, and that's, I think, where it starts is we need to reduce our usage of these items. And I know that they're popular for a reason. They're really popular with people that are active and working out and doing off running, whatever. But if we stopped using it as much and we'd stop purchasing polyester clothing, then it would be a tremendous step in the right direction. Then we wouldn't have to worry about filtration as much with laundry. We wouldn't have to worry about its impact on the environment. Those all seem kind of a lot, way more extra than just stopping our usage of these items. So I think it starts there. And then, if there are some new innovative designs for certain things that you can put in your washing machine, and certainly other countries have shown that they filter, the end product of using gray water. But ultimately, I think it comes down to our usage. We just need to be a little bit more aware of what we're using and where that goes.
Yeah, we have experience in Indonesia. The big brand of polyester is produced in Indonesia. In the west side of our island is Citarum River is fully contaminated with the fiber, because there is a lot of public industry from the big brand, international brand is produced the polyester in our river. So we are suffer with the polyester pollution. So please reduce your style, to more sustainable. Yeah.
Great. Aside from prevention and plastics reduction, are there any effective ways to deal with the existing microplastics? Thara, I don't know if you want to address that with some of the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, I think advocacy to the government, calling out the industry, I think it's very important, because aside we campaigning to reduce plastic and educate other people about microplastic and the dangers about plastic. We can also push the government to probably having a regulation to reduce plastic waste, or we can call out the industry to take responsibilities on their products that they produce. I think that.
Great. And how do you, how can grassroots groups help influence the research agenda of major institutions so they focus on studying microplastics, especially in locations away from the coast?
That's a really excellent question. I think there's a lot of collaborative opportunity there, you know, to work with scientists. There's so much that we only have access to. Like I'm in Arizona, I'm not a coastal part of the United States, but certainly we rely upon collaboration to have, you know, coastal groups send us things. And even if it's not a coastal group, I think it's important that we all know that no matter where we live, the water, the waste that leaves our house absolutely can end up in the ocean and end up in ecosystems that aren't ready to handle it and end up in areas that aren't responsible for polluting. You know, even in like the Midwest and you know, our country, we're contributing to the plastic pollution problem. So it's important that we all know that we play a role, but we can also collaborate further with, you know, wonderful researchers that we're all, you know, my fellow panelists here that are doing such incredible work where they are. So we all have the opportunity to collaborate and learn from each other, which is probably the most exciting part of studying plastic pollution.
Great, yeah.
In the developing country, microplastic is so tiny, so it's not our, you know, our priority. So it's for us is, do the more research, more evident that the microplastic is dangerous for our health. So I think it's, maybe Charles can, we can go, collaboration, USA, developed country with developing country to more inform to the community, to people that we are in the, we are impact of the microplastic is very dangerous. So we must push information, provide the information to the community that we must realize that microplastic is dangerous in my face, in front of our face.
Yep, it's clear that this is a global issue, and international collaboration is probably one of the many ways that we are going to move forward with this. So on that note, you probably all have different ways of thinking about this, but how do you propose we stop plastic pollution at the upstream source points?
Yeah, for us is in Indonesia, we in Ecoton we promote to reduce the use of single-use plastic. In Indonesia, we have more than 42 cities start to ban the using single-use plastic. So it's good climate for us that some local government started to ban the single-use plastic. So for us, people in the city, educate people, using the tumbler, stop using bottle drinking water bottles, plastic straw, styrofoam, disposal diapers, personal care product that use a lot of microbead is, push, we need more publication in television, advertising on online media to push this information to people, all people.
Great. All right. One last question, and I'll try to keep it brief, but I would love to hear from all of you. How do you stay inspired to organize around this issue?
I think what's really amazing to see is all of these efforts pay off. So, to see awesome research unfold that exposes, plastic pollution, sheds more light on the issue, motivating people to make a behavioral change. I think that's where this starts. I think if we all changed our behaviors, if there's no demand, there's not going to be a supply. And so we have to realize our power is within our community to refuse using this stuff and reduce it. It's going to, cause this massive wave, if we all collectively rally around this. And then seeing, how outreach pays off. So if we talk to a group of kids, if we talk to, a local center about the plastic usage, the misconceptions of recycling, what have you, and then come back and see how they've branched out and they've each kind of gone in their own directions and either empowered other family members or other community members to make a change. I think that all makes it worthwhile, even though the fight, is really difficult and there's so much plastic out there. Having these little grassroots movements develop is really inspiring, and to see how everyone tackles it in their own way. Even speaking with my fellow panelists and hearing what they're working on is incredibly inspiring. So I think it's incredible to be in witness of that.
Yeah, for me, we conduct citizen science. We using a detective school for microplastic. This is a pandemic, so all school is locked down. So we try to, open the detective school to identify the microplastic, because it is not my problem. It is your problem. So you must be part of the solution. So we invite students, we invite women group to identify the microplastic using a simple tool. So for us, is more people know about the microplastic, is for us is easy to push the government, change the regulation, to push the producer. So recently we show the 3 producers shown by women. So I think it's a good step for us to involve more people to more understand about the microplastic issue. It's become an elitist issue now, but you must invite a lot more people to become a common issue, microplastic.
Yeah, for me, my inspiration to keep going is that seeing the problem around us, we can just stay doing nothing. We are the future generation. If we don't care about what happened surround us, if we keep destroying our environment, we will be the one who feel the impact in the future. So we have to fight for our future. If it's not us, then who else? And one of my inspiration is that we have to be the person that can bring benefit and a positive impact to other people and to the environment.
Great. Thank you so much, Thara, Prigi, Charles, and to everyone who has tuned in to the talk.
And a big thank you to you all, and thank you, Abby, for moderating our webinar. I'd like to invite everyone, thank you first of all for staying a few minutes over, and I could just ask questions for the next hour. I'm totally riveted by this, but I invite you all to tune in for our next webinar on Wednesday, November 18th. It'll be starting at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. The topic will be campaigning against corporate plastic polluters, how you can get involved. Our panelists will include Mike Shade from Mind the Store Campaign Director and Safer Chemicals, Healthy Families, Eve Fox, the Digital Director of Beyond Plastics, and Shilpi Chotre, Global Communications Lead for Break Free from Plastic. It will be moderated by Plastic Pollution Coalition's Director of Communications, Emily DeFrisco, and we invite you to get involved with us. With Plastic Pollution Coalition, please stay involved. Please sign up for our next webinar. We invite you to connect with us on social media to learn more, and we will be sending out a link to a survey, and we'd love to get your feedback on this webinar. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's wonderful to see everyone, and we'll see you at the next one. Have a great day, or night, or morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.